Hello everyone, I am Saksham and today I am going to talk about my latest project named as WebRock. WebRock is a web services framework which helps programmers to avoid burden of writing thousands of servlet classes. Instead of what developers can do, they can create a package structure, folder structure and create different methods in a limited number of classes, right? And they can create annotations that annotations will help programmers to avoid writing monotonous code for their servlets, right? So let's get started. Uh, so for for this thing, what will be the environment setup for this project? What do you need, basically? So this project will need something like latest JDK version, uh, Apache Tomcat server for Java. You have to set Java path as well as Tomcat folder path inside your startup batch file. Let me show you this thing first. Notepad, like suppose I have downloaded a Tomcat version 9 and I have pasted this the folder of Tomcat 9 on my C root, and inside the bin folder of Tomcat I have this startup.bat, which is a batch file, Windows batch file. I have set the Catalina home value as C Tomcat 9 and Java home value is JDK 11. This is compulsory if you are using Tomcat. And I have set my JDK in my environment variable for this Tomcat, sorry, for Java. After that, you will need a web.xml file. So inside Tomcat 9 web apps folder, I have already created a folder for testing purpose named as one. So let's switch to one folder. Inside that folder, let me check what are the necessary files or folders that are already present. So inside that folder, there are some in JSP and HTML files, and there is one folder named as webinf, which is our. So in that webinf folder, there is a file named web.xml. This is a compulsory file, and yeah. So you have to how you can download this file. You can download this file from my repository inside a webinf folder. I have uploaded a file named as web.xml. You can download or clone this file from here, and you can change the contents of the file. Like, let me customize this file according to my need. So here, I have named my servlet as TM WebRock. I can change this according to my need. Like for example, I will create a project for my school. So let me change it to school service, right? And here is the service package prefix, which basically tells what will be the starting folder name in which I will develop my project. So I am naming this as com. I can change it, or I can customize it according to my need, right? You can't change anything apart from these things, like this param value for service package prefix and this URL pattern. If you will try to change some of the things like servlet name class, then there might be a possibility that our my framework will not be able to recognize the classes which you are mentioning in your inside your package, right? So let's get started with uh, so after that web.xml file, what you will need to do, like let me check first what is the things present inside the web. Okay, so in this webinf folder there is a folder named as lib. Okay, so let's switch to lib folder. Let me check. Okay, there is a two jar files which are already presented here, json jar and tmwebrock.jar. So tmwebrock.jar is basically my framework jar file. Like whatever annotation you are going to use in your services, this jar file will recognize that annotations at runtime and will try to uh, invoke that methods and classes code. So this is a required jar file. You will have to paste this jar inside your lib folder, which is already presented in your Tomcat's project directory, right? So how you can download this jar files, the JSON, and let me tell you about JSON. JSON is a uh, jar file which is used to convert an object into a JSON or vice versa. So how you can download these jar files? Okay, so I have already shared my GitHub repository. Uh, like as you can see inside that webinf lib, there is jar files which are already presented. You can clone or download this jar files from here, right? And okay, let me go to, okay, okay. So now let's begin with the project. Okay, so let's move first to classes folder inside webinf folder, right? And inside that classes, let's create a folder structure which starts with the server service package prefix, which I have already mentioned in my web.xml. So what was that? That was started with com. Okay, so let me create a folder named as com. Let me switch it to com. Okay, so you can create any number of classes inside that com package, and you can create multiple folders inside that com folder too. My code with my framework will scan all the necessary codes, which all the necessary classes inside that folder structure, which is starting with uh, this package prefix com, right? So let me create one more folder inside that folder named as project. Okay, okay, right. Okay, so now let's create a service. I will tell you the details of each annotation one by one. Let me create a service named as student service, because I am creating uh, an application for school, right? Okay, so here what things I I need to do: com dot project, right? You have to specify your project. What was that? Com project. Okay, and you can create a class like this. Okay, now you can, now this class won't be recognized by our framework because I have not provided any annotations. So for that, first I need to import some packages uh, which will impose that annotations at runtime of our application. Okay, so import com thinking machines webrock and annotations dot star. Okay, so one more file. I don't think so it will need, I will need this file right now or not, but let me import it. Injections. Okay, right. So I will first explain you about the annotations, path, and uh, get post. So path is an annotations which is used to set path for your request URI, whatever comes in your request URI. So let me explain this thing with an example. So let me basically path is a class level as well as method level annotation. This works on both method as well as on class too. So let me name this as student service. Okay, again let me create a class named as public. uh Public, let me name string, and test student. Here I have also have to mention, I can write whatever I can write. Okay, and in this method let me return a student name named as Saksham, student name, and let me print some data inside that. Test student invoked, right? And I have to tell this, I have to declare an annotation named as get or post Suppose I am working for a get request right now, so I can use get annotation. And I this annotation is basically same, like it will work both on both class level as well as on field level. So right now I'm not uh, uh, focused on imposing this annotation on class level. So let me first write this as post. I will tell you one thing. After that, I will change it to get. So what basically, if we try to write get on this uh, on class level, this will, by using this functionality, we are telling our framework that consider all services, all methods present inside that class as get request, right? So you cannot write post if you are writing get on this thing, otherwise it will be conflicted, right? And this will throw this will tell that method not allowed or some internal server error kind of things, right? So you cannot write this kind of things. You can only declare at class level, then you cannot change it on method level. Else what you can do, you can declare on each method, right? First I am declaring it on post. Okay. So let's compile it first. Java C minus class path C colon Tomcat 9 lib folder, and C Tomcat 9 Tomcat 9 web apps, and inside what is my folder name 1, and webinf. Inside webinf there is a folder named libs where my json and tmwebrock.jar is presented, right? C Tomcat 9 and again web apps 1 webinf and classes. Okay, so student service.java. Okay, this got compiled, and student service, right? Okay, so let me start my server. How can I start my server? Run this batch file startup.bat. Okay, so as you can see, only one services. I have only created only one services named as student service test. So it is showing on this window of that Tomcat server, Tomcat batch file, right? So let me test it first. So what I can do, 8090 localhost 9090 was my name, and here what I named my application as one. It was a school service, and let me change this thing as well. Okay, let me check it first. What was that? Student service and test. Student service. Okay, and here it will be of test. Okay, as you can see, 405 method not allowed because we are trying to reach to some get request, and here I have mentioned it as post. So let me change it to get. Let me compile it again. Don't worry about this compilation line. I have provided this thing in my documentation and inside my GitHub repository as well in my README file. Let me restart my server. Remember one thing, whenever you will try to compile any service code, you have to you again have to restart your server, right? Let me change it. Okay, as you can see, message is saksham, no exception, and success is true. This is a response which I will get, and here you can see test student invoked. So this was my first example for testing, right? Okay, now uh, let's uh, let's as we have tested it for path and get. Okay, let's test it for forward first, then I will try to uh, you know I will try to test for on startup annotation. Okay, let me create a file first in my webinf notepad index.jsp. Let me paste it from my uh, repository because I don't want to do this monotonous donkey work over here. Okay, this is my index.jsp file. I will change the contents of this file. Don't worry about that. Index.jsp, control C, control V. Okay, students, index.jsp file. And here, okay, this is nothing but server side rendering from JSP. Being fancy over here. Okay, save it. Save this index.jsp file. Let's switch again to our com project folder, classes com project. Okay, now let's test for the forward annotation. Let's apply a forward annotation over here. Let's give a path as index.jsp. So whenever this function uh, will the functionality of this function will be completed, the processing of forward annotation will be the processing of this forward annotation will be done by our framework, right? So let's compile it again and see what is the output coming on the screen. Okay, compile it. Okay, successfully good compiled. Let me restart the server first. Okay, so let's okay, as you can see now I am getting the uh, JSP page for that for this thing, right? The JSP page for that particular. So let me check the content of the JSP. dir. Okay, I guess I have changed the wrong JSP. This JSP will come inside that one folder, not on the webinf folder. So here I need to change this. I have already created this JSP students index JSP page. Let me save it and com webinf classes com project. Okay, CLS. Let me compile it again. Okay, let me restart the server. Okay, now let's refresh it. Okay, as you can see, students index JSP page. This is 10 is nothing but 2 into 5 that I have written on my JSP. Test a student invoke. Okay, let me show one more feature functionality for that forward. Right. Let me create one more service path get path is test2 should start with a slash, otherwise it might throw some internal server error or resource not found. And here let me create one more function public void test1, right? Public void test1 named as path test test1 get request, and here public void naming this as public void test1, right? We won't return something. Let me print out that test1 has invoked. Test1 invoked. Let me okay at the rate forward. So whenever this test2 method will be invoked, then the method which is annotating this test2 will be invoked. This will redirect to test1 service. So how can I do that thing? Student service test1. Okay, giving the actual path. Here I will write public void test2, and here I will write system.out.println uh, test2 invoked. Check it again. Student service test1 invoked. Okay, I guess everything is correct. This should work. Test2 invoke. Let me refresh. Sorry, restart my server. Okay, let me invoke test2, and let me check if it is invoking test1 internally from this forward annotation or not. So what I will write over here, test2, and let me check on the command. So here, as you can see, test2 invoked first, and that after that test1 has invoked. Basically it is internally invoking, and it internally forwarding that request to test1. So here how this forward annotation works, right? That's how this forward annotation works. Okay, let me move on to next annotation, and which is basically on startup annotation, I guess. Okay, on a startup. So let's test for on startup uh, path. Startup, you can use any path, get, and here what I will write uh, on startup. Here I have to use priority. I will show you what this thing means. Okay, so right now in this first release, what I have done, I whenever I will use this on startup annotation, I have to declare my method as the method return type should be void, and there won't be any there should not be any parameters in that method. That's how this thing will work right now. So public void start up, I will write over here system.out.println. Let me prepare a hash map for this. Okay, not a hash map. Let me create a private list of string list. Okay, equal to new uh, array list of string. Let me import java.util.star. Okay, private list of string. Okay, so at up what I will do in this thing, list dot add, I will add two records, Mohan. List dot add Suresh. Okay, system dot out dot println startup invoked. Let me create two more methods, same type. Startup, let me change this priority to 2, startup 2, and startup 2, startup 2 invoked. And if for string L of type this dot list print system dot out dot println s sorry L. Okay, now let me copy and paste this thing to one more time, right? Let me change this priority to 3, 3, and 3. Okay. So what does own startup annotation do? This annotation, by writing this annotation, our framework will first invoke this function on server startup, right? And what does this priority mean? It means that it will execute the methods annotated with on startup in that priority order, in that priority ascending sequence, right? So let me test it first. You will get more idea about this thing what I am talking about. Okay, some spelling mistake, or sorry, control G 46. Okay. Okay, public void startup 2 was already defined. Okay, startup 3. Let me restart my server. Again, I am telling you one more thing. Okay, as you can see, startup invoked. As you can see, first this startup uh, got invoked, right? And it has printed that startup invoked. After that, startup 2 has invoked. First, it has printed the list. As you can see over here, this has printed that list. Mohan and Suresh. Startup 2 invoked. Again, startup 3 has invoked. It first printed this Mohan and Suresh from this list, and after that it is printed that startup 3 has invoked. So as you can see, this uh, framework is invoking these methods in the uh, ascending order of that priority sequence. So if a developer wants to populate some data at on the server startup, then probably they can use this feature, they can use this annotation for populating some data on server startup, and they can use this collection in their project later on, right? So this was the demonstration for on startup annotation. Okay, let me talk about some more annotations. I will discuss post later on. First, let me tell you about the annotation and okay. First, I will discuss first the scopes. Okay, scopes. For scopes, this injections you have to import this injections package, right? Now, if you want to use any scope, you can uh, use this kind of annotation: inject application scope, inject request scope. You can use any of them if you as per your requirement. Inject session scope, inject application directory, right? And inside this student service class, I have to declare some properties for this scopes. Private, uh, here I can use application scope. Basically, this application scope is presented inside that injections package. Application scope, private, session scope, session scope, private, uh, request scope, request scope, private, and application directory, I guess. Yeah, application directory, application directory. tree. Okay. So what I need to do next, I have to declare the setters. So our framework will call this setters and inject that scope inside that inside a using a parameterized setter injection, right? Okay. Public void set. Remember one thing, the name after the set method will be same as the name written over here, right? Set application scope. Here I will write application scope, application scope. Uh, Here I will write system.out.println first. Application set application scope invoked, right? And after that I will set in my global property from whatever has been arriving from this setter method inside the parameter of the setter method, right? Let me do it for all the scopes. 3 4 set application scope, set session scope, change it to session scope, session scope, and here it should be session scope. So set session scope invoke set session scope. Okay, session scope on I will. Okay, I don't want to use the directory and request right now. I am only focusing on this too. So I have declared setters for them, and here, so let's test it out first that it is in invoking this uh, setters or not. Let me compile it. Okay, but compile. Let me run it. Okay, so right now it has not invoked that setters and getters. I have to use some tricks to uh, use these things in my application, right? Okay, so let me check it on my repository what I have done. WebInf, inside classes, copy, inside I guess foo, inside the test service.java. Set application scope. Okay, let me use this application in some. Let me create one more service. Path will be something like that. ABC. Okay, get and public. Okay, public string ABC. Let me test uh, if this dot application scope not equal to null, and system dot out dot println implication scope object as initialized initialized, right? Some return statement. Okay, return ABC. Okay, let me change it to, what was that? ABC, I guess. ABC. Now, as you can see, before invoking this method ABC, my framework has called that application scope and session scope methods using setter injection automatically, right? Okay, so now that now it's time to uh, use this scopes, right? Let me set some, populate this application scope with some again some key. Okay, so I will use this dot application scope dot set attribute method for this, and I will set against name as uh, Mohan. Okay, and I can I can set multiple key value pair inside this scope, and and id, let's say 1001, right? So void. Okay, okay, now let's create one more method and get this data and fetch this data from that method. So fetch student, let me name this as fetch student. Public void, okay, not hash map, not hash map exactly. Okay, not, let me do this as void fetch student. I will only print this data is arriving in this scope or not. It's a student, so I have to use this condition as well. Student, if this dot application scope dot get attribute name not equal to null, system dot out dot println. Okay, do this for code also, not code exactly, id get attribute id, right? So let's test it out. I've compiled this code. Let me close my server, restart it. So what I have set in my scope is name Mohan against the key name and 1000 against the key ID. Okay. Let me first send request to ABC so that it can set data in. Okay. Now let's test for this fetch student so that if something is present against a name and ID in a application scope, it will print that name and code, right? Fetch student. Let's check it out. Okay, as you can see, Mohan and 1001 is presented is print has been printed on the monitor, right? So what does this application scope mean? It means that you can use this application scope throughout your application, right? Throughout your application. Same thing is happens for session scope. You can use you can put any of the data in your session, and you can use this data in different services as well, different class files and services as well. But the thing is not same for request scope. Request scopes is changes for each request response pairs, right? And regarding application directory, it will give you the directory level file path for that application directory in using servlet context used by Tomcat server, right? So by using these features, you can put any data inside your application scope, and you can use this data inside your JSP by writing that dollar curly braces symbols, and either you can use that percentage sign inside that JSP for server side rendering, right? So these are some scopes which I have told you. Okay. And okay, now let's discuss some more functionality of this thing. What are the things that has been remaining right now? Video is already too much big. Okay. Okay, let me tell you about the request parameter. Okay, let's create one more method, request param. For request param, get, remember request param only works for get type of method, right? Public string request param. Let me write an annotation. This is a parameter level annotation, request parameter. Let me name this as xyz. Whatever will be arriving, I will typecast that into a string xyz, and whatever has been arriving, I will send this thing again in response. Let's print it out first. That this is basically nothing but a data which has been arriving in query string against a key named as xyz, right? Okay. Request param param invoked for xyz. Okay, successfully got compiled. Let's test it out. Now let's send the request to uh, request request param. Okay, I have not sent any query string. So xyz equal to request param xyz equal to let's say my name Saksham. As you can see, Saksham has been arriving over here, and you can see the value of xyz parameter is Saksham. So that's how you can use the request parameter annotation. You can use any of the type. You can use something like that, request parameter uh, code. Here you can use this integer code. You can use even boolean, short, byte, any of the things, right? So I'm demonstrating it for one more function, one more parameter. Sorry, two more parameter: flag, boolean, flag, xyz code, and what was the next one? Flag. Sorry, I have already compiled it. I'm compiling it again. Okay, let's test it again. Again, the name as Saksham, and code equal to 101, and flag equal to true. Let's check it out. Request from invoke for Saksham 101 true. Right? It is working fine. Okay. You can similarly use this inject request parameter annotation instead of using this in as a query string. What you can do, let me tell you. You can declare a variable named as xyz over here, private string xyz, and uh, on the top of this property I can use this inject request parameter, and here I will tell my framework that I am whatever is coming from this xyz will inject this thing, this value in this xyz variable, right? Now I can use this variable over here. This will work same as what we were working earlier, right? Let's do the same thing again. Sorry. Let's send the request again, and right now I am not interested in code and flag. Okay, as you can see again it is printing success, right? So that is another way of doing the request, injecting request parameter in variables, right? Now let's discuss about okay, let's discuss about path variable. After that I will discuss about auto wired path. Let's name is path variable. You can use whatever you want to use. Get, you can even use post for path variable, that is not an issue. Right now I am not doing it. Public void path variable. Okay, path variable, I will use path variable annotation over here. Integer quote path variable, integer, sorry, not integer, string name, and one more path variable, and let's name this thing as double salary. So whatever arriving inside the request URI path, it will directly inject it inside this in this values as a method parameters, right? Let me print out this thing, system.out.println code, comma, name, comma, salary variable, right? I'm only using right now only one services, student services.java. You can use multiple services if you want to create. Right now I'm only interested in demonstrating that video, not interested in creating entire project from scratch. Okay, let me test it for path variable service, path variable, and let's provide some data in path. Okay, here let's change this thing to path variable. Okay, now let's concatenate some words. First one was code, second one was, what was the second one? Name, and again the salary. Name was, let's say name is Golu, and the salary for is, let's say, 1 lakh month. Okay, let's check it out. As you can see, 101 Golu, and this 1 lakh has been printed over here. So that's how you can use path variable. You can instead use request parameter and as well as path in the uh, same method parameters, right? Let's name this as uh, uh, gender string, gender, or I can do one more thing. I can name this character gender. Let's print this thing to gender. Let's compile it. Now let's run it, and yeah, I have to provide query string this time, which name as gender equal to male. Okay, as you can see, M has been arriving over here. So what that's how this annotation path variable works. Now let's discuss about auto wide annotation first, and then I will come to this post and working of this post annotation, right? Auto wired. Okay, so let's declare a field named as not. I'm not doing this field over here. Let's put some data in scope right now. So what I'm doing in this thing, okay, so I will call this ABC method. Let's create one more service, notepad, uh, project service name. Let's name this as project service, right? Project service.java package com project import statements, import com machines WebRock dot star. Right now, I guess I don't need any injections, so let's name this as project service, and okay, public class project service. Sorry, uh, path. Yes, I am testing for the auto wired, right? Let's declare a variable. So I can use any of the variable. I can use even the non-primitive data types on non-wrapper class, even object classes like employee, student, something like that. But right now I have put only integer and strings in my application scope, so I will use that kind of things over here. So let's declare auto wired first. Auto wired against a name private integer, sorry, not integer, just name. Auto wired code, private integer code, right? Path auto wired get request. I can test it for even post too, but right now I'm not interested in post. Public void auto wired. If code is not equal to null, system.out.println code. If name is not uh, null, system.out.println. I will explain this. What does this auto wire annotation do? First, let me print it out. Okay, let's compile this thing too. So let me write a star over here. Okay, I have done something wrong. Okay, I have to specify this against a property named as name, name equal to code. Okay, All the classes got compiled. Let me restart my server. So first I have to hit that ABC API. ABC, what it will do, it will set, okay, I have done something wrong. Sorry, I have I have to use ID over there. I have used code, I guess. Notepad, project service dot java. Okay, so let me change this thing to ID, ID, and here ID as well. Right, compile it again. Successfully got compiled. Startup. Let's run startup. Okay, let me first send request to that this ABC API. This will put some data inside application scope named as name against some name and ID. Okay, okay. Let me run this thing as student service. Uh, student service. Okay, ABC. Okay, as you can see, is after invoking this method, some data has been set inside this application scope against the against the key as name and ID, right? Now let me test this thing that this data has been arriving inside my project service against the name and ID. Okay, so let me run this. Let me hit this API project service and auto wired project service and auto wired project service auto wired. Let me check the spelling. Service auto wired. Okay, correct. Then let's check it out. Okay, as you can see, 1001 and Mohan has been coming over here. So what does this auto wired annotation do? This annotation will check like if something is present inside the application scope or session scope or request scope against this particular key. If if something is present against this particular key in any of the scopes, it will directly inject the value that has been kept inside that key in any of the scope in this against this variable, right? This will inject the value again in this object, right? So that's how auto-wide annotation works, right? Okay, let me test for pose. This will be the last annotation, right? Post. So before testing for post, let me create a pojo first. Notepad student.java package com project, and here let me, okay, uh, public class student and private. I can use even serializable to, I can implement this class to serializable if I want to send data against a network or inside some memory space, right? Integer, roll number, private, string, name of the student. Right now there's only two fields, right? So public, student default constructor, do is fast is monotonous work. Let me null. Okay, not null right now. Zero. Just string name equal to num. Setter getters public void set roll number, integer roll number. This dot roll number equal to roll number, public void, not void, integer get roll. return this dot roll number. Now let's public void set name string name this dot name equal to name, right? Public uh, string get name, return this dot name. Mm, okay, all right. Let's compile this thing to star.java. Check. Okay, this has been created as student.java file, student.class file. Sorry. Now let's use this student.java inside this inside post request path for post. So add, sorry, fetch, not fetch, add student. Let's name this add student. It will return a student object public. So let me first use this post annotation public student add student. Here student will be arrived, object will be arriving, and I will print this data from this student object. Then I will return this student dot get code, sorry, not code, get roll number, I guess, roll number, and here student dot get name. I can use path variables with this annotation with this student object. Even I can use uh, application scope. Even I can use request scope with this. But one thing, you must remember that you cannot use request parameter with this thing, or even you cannot use any of the you cannot use any variables. You cannot declare any variables inside that method apart from that single student or application scope or request scope or directory or session, right? These are mandatory thing, otherwise it will show you that internal server error, right? And return this a student as well. I have to use postman to check this if it is working fine or not. Student, okay, successfully got compiled. Okay, let's start the server. Okay, let's test this API from uh, postman, add student and student. So here what I will do, I will first copy paste this URL from over here, control C, control V over here, right? Project service, not project service, I guess that was student service. Student service, add student, request is of type post. Right now I'm not focusing on put, patch, delete. Most working has been done for get and post. Now let's pass some JSON over here. Uh, roll number is 100, and this is not a text, this is a JavaScript. And here roll number, and here name section. So why is it showing like that? Big problem. I don't know why is it happening so, right? So I have to use the same naming convention as I have declared in my Pojo class student. right? Post, and let's send it. Okay, as you can see, I am getting roll number is 100 and name is Saksham in my message, and let's test it on. Okay, as you can see, I am getting 100 and Saksham on over here, right? And as you can see, sorry, notepad, uh, there is no issues in writing. Uh, there's no issues in writing. Application scope and request scope against that, but I cannot write this kind of thing in post request, otherwise it will redirect me to 500. Suppose a integer a. Okay, let me compile this. Let me run it again. Okay, Java C start.java. Let me refresh my server. I guess it won't work right now. Let's test it again. We see a equal to 101, right? Okay, I'm getting 500. If I try to remove this and run it again, it is showing me the same error, right? So instead of this, what I can do, I can use path variable, integer a system.out.println. I can set this thing, this student, even in my application scope or session scope or request scope, and I can inject that this this Pojo class objects in my auto wired field, right? A A A A, right? Compile it again. Let's compile it again. Okay, spelling mistake, I guess. Okay, air student A A A. What I'm throwing in against A 1001. Okay, 100, and yes, you can see A is getting 1001, right? So that's all from my side for this framework. Okay, thank you so much.